தமிழரின் பிம்பம் உங்கள் டிவி.
Welcome to CrossRoads on TVI. I'm your host, Parthi Kandaval. Dear viewers, this past month has seen quite a lot of activity in regard to the situation facing our homeland. In March, we saw the United Nations Human Rights Council passing a mild and non-binding resolution urging Sri Lanka to carry out investigations of war crimes. The Council, however, did not establish an international investigation for these war crimes. In the run-up to this UNHRC vote, Tamil Nadu youth and young professionals galvanized the state through large protests against India's position on the vote and Sri Lanka in general. These protests, from the commoner to law students to IT professionals, attracted much support throughout India and across the world. Also, last week, Mahinda Rajapaksa announced that the Northern Provincial Council, or NPC, elections will be held sometime in September. The northern province includes Jaffna, Mullaitivu, Mannar, Vavuniya and Kilinochchi districts. In May, it is nearing 4 years since the end of the war. With that, the nature of the relationship of us in the diaspora to our people in the homeland has changed. To discuss these issues, we are joined with Krishna Savaranamuthu. Krishna is the national spokesperson of the National Council of Canadian Tamils. He is also a founding member of the Coalition for Tamil Rights, consisting of activists, academic workers, students from the Tamil community and from broader Canadian civil society. Usha Sriskandarajah is a senator in the TGTE, a writer, human rights activist, Rotary International's Paul Harris Lifetime Achievement Awardee for Community Service, and yoga teacher. Also joining us from Chennai via Skype is Ashik Bonifer, a research fellow with the Center for Asia Studies. He has expertise on Sri Lanka, Maldives, and Indian Ocean maritime-related strategic issues, and an advisor on Sri Lankan studies at the Asian Center for Peace and Development in Coimbatore. Please join us in this discussion at 416-623-8100. 416-623-8100. Please do share your thoughts, ideas, questions, and comments. Welcome, Mrs. Sriskandarajah, Krishna, and Ashik. Thank you for joining us on this show, on this important topic.
Thanks for having us.
Vanakkam.
No, vanakkam. Thank you all. And what prompted this show and the show's topic idea was the hope that a lot of the Tamil Nadu youth and young professionals gave the Tamil struggle for rights in Sri Lanka a lot of hope and opportunity, and it surprised a lot of us, right? Before we get into the movement that we saw in Tamil Nadu throughout the state and even in other parts of India, it's important, I guess, to discuss the relationship Tamil Nadu has had with our struggle. Perhaps, Ashik, if you can give us some context to how Tamil Nadu has played a role, not just recently, but throughout the struggle in Sri Lanka.
Yeah, Tamil Nadu has always been a party to what is happening in Sri Lanka, especially the conflict that has battered the entire island for nearly 30 years plus. We have been quite concerned about what is happening in Sri Lanka. We have supported to a great extent the Tamil cause, but since the death of Rajiv Gandhi, there was a more hands-off policy. But again, in the last phase of conflict, Tamil Nadu was interested, there were a lot of protests, but due to the political situation then, things were not up in the media, it was not widespread. But from this year onwards, things have gone way ahead than what is expected. In fact, for the first time, you have the students, you have the professionals, you have people in various fields come together, and including the lawyers, they've come together and have protested quite drastically against what has happened in Sri Lanka in 2009, and very, very recently the way Sri Lankan government is handling the Tamils, and especially when you look at the 13th Amendment that we are supposed to, which they promised, but they have gone back on it again and again. This has irritated the Tamil population to a great extent, and then we seem to be pushing the things up now.
What are the dynamics that are existing now, are they in any way similar to the dynamics in Tamil Nadu in the 1980s, where, of course, we all saw much widespread support? Is it similar, or how is it different?
Okay, one is in 1980s you had a large flow of refugees to India, and thereafter it took issue to the local population. But now it's different because it's more the professionals, the students with the support of the social media who seem to be pushing things through. Okay, there is no big difference from this mobilization part of it, but of course the context is different. Then the situation is different where people were more closer to the issue, but now again people are closer to the issue, but they are confused. They don't know what is likely to happen, what could happen, how is the government going to react. At least in 80s we had a particular idea of how the government would react, but now we are quite vague in that context. For that, at least, you have Tamil Nadu people who are not happy with the way government seem to be responding, especially the central government. It's pushing it up.
Okay. Krishna, what are your thoughts on the nature of Tamil Nadu's role in the wider Tamil struggle?
Well, Tamil Nadu historically has played a tremendous role providing both political, moral, and economic support to the Tamil liberation struggle. Now, I would take a slightly different and perhaps a broader perspective. I've had the ability to interact with student leaders of the Tamil Nadu student protest, vast sections of them over the last few months. And one thing that becomes very clear is that there is an emerging new leadership within Tamil Nadu. It used to be the case that it was the political parties in South India that did all of the leading. But it seems that over the last few months, the paradigm has changed, and now it's the political parties that are being led. We see this with Karunanidhi being forced to leave the central government, not because he perhaps did it out of the compulsion of his own heart, but perhaps because it was too contentious of an issue for him to ignore. Similarly, we've seen the chief minister, who in the past has taken somewhat of an ambiguous position on the Tamil liberation struggle, has endorsed all of the calls of the Tamil Nadu student protesters by passing the state resolution. So what I would suggest is happening is that there's a new politically savvy, conceptually clear leadership that is emerging, and this leadership has unequivocally rejected the U.S. LLRC resolution. This new leadership has called for the immediate investigation of war crimes, crimes against humanity, and genocide at an international level. It's calling for a referendum to establish a sovereign state of Tamilam, and it's calling for India to impose economic sanctions on Sri Lanka.
Mrs. Sriskandaraj, on the topic that Krishna brought up, the relationship of the Tamil Nadu political parties, specifically the DMK and the AIMDMK, historically, how have you seen their role throughout the 80s, 90s, and the 2000s towards our struggle? Have they been...
Well, if you take the last elections, the Tamil Nadu State Assembly elections, Jayalalitha went ahead and fully supported the liberation struggle. She said that she would support a separate Ilam. And then in terms of the student protests, I feel that they have given a new lease of life to our struggle, to the Tamilam revolution. They have given it a new lease of life. They have, actually now we thought that the idea of Ulam had died in Mullivaikkal, because personally I was numb after Mullivaikkal for months and months. I couldn't operate. And then they have given a new lease of life, I feel. And they have mobilized nearly 75 million people.
And on that topic...
And so Ulam lives on in the hearts and minds of 75 million people. And of course in the diaspora amongst the Ulam Tamils.
Ashik, on that topic of the mobilization the Tamil youth have in Tamil Nadu and young professionals, how did that get kick-started? How did that culminate in something that in a way surprised all of us?
I just want to add one issue about the earlier question. That is, hello?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, what has happened is in 80s you find a lot of mobilization based on from the political side. but now it is more from the professional side as well as the students. Here the politicians play a very little role at this point. Hello?
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead. Ashik.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is a major difference that we had from 80s as well as the one which we look at now. But when you look at how things happen, the issue, okay, when you look at the mobilization part of it, thanks to the Channel 4 video that was telecast some time ago, things show to the people that things are not going the way it is expected. There have been more displeasure that is happening. Okay, next to the level, they expected the political parties to come and take particular stand, but there was a whole lot of vagueness that was prevalent in the widespread. Soon following this, we also find students mainly, they were unhappy with what was happening within the country on the reaction to the Tamil issue. So students, initially it was just a peace march that happened in Marina Beach, and thereafter students who took part in the Marina Beach, some of the Loyola students went back and then they started their fast. It was a short fast. They thought it could be a day or two, but it went on for a week. With Loyola taking the lead, soon you find a lot of law students coming into the foray. As soon as the law students came, then law students from every colleges in every district, they again joined in, followed by the students of arts and science colleges, as well as the engineering colleges.
Ashik, some commentators have alluded to the picture of Prabha and son Balachandran played a catalyst role in galvanizing the support. Can you comment on that? Was that something you noticed with your students who participated?
Yes, that led the whole issue. That was the trump card, would say, that happened, because throughout Chennai you had a lot of pictures of Balachandran's the killing, as well as what was shown in the Channel 4. It was there throughout Tamil Nadu, not just in Madras. That picture was there.
Well, it was Callum McRae's No Fire Zone documentary, where they showed our leader's son, Balachandran, being given a snack and then executed, just like that at close range, and that really escalated the protests. And if I may just say about the students, students, they are not corrupt. They see things in black and white, and when there is justice, they do react, and that's what happened. And I feel that they have put the central government and the Tamil Nadu political parties on notice. So anytime when an issue comes up, there is the potential that there could be an uprising anytime.
Krishna, what's been your read on that relationship between the Tamil Nadu's protest, which is singly minded? It's not a political, though it's a political issue, it's not a political party.
Right.
How is that relationship with the political parties of Tamil Nadu?
Well, in my conversations with the leaders of the Tamil Nadu student protests, they've made it very clear that they're not interested in making this into a partisan issue, one political party as opposed to another. They would like to put pressure on all of the political parties at the Tamil Nadu state level as well as at the central level to ensure that there is justice and there is freedom for the Tamil people. And again, I think that this is representing a new trend within the new generation of the Tamil liberation struggle, because we're seeing a new generation rising up in our homeland, we're seeing a new generation rising up in the diaspora, we're seeing a new generation rising up in Tamil Nadu that is unambiguously clear on the question of Tamil sovereignty, on the question of Tamil freedom. It's very clear to this new generation that any solution to the island's conflict, any solution that may come from the international establishments, from the world powers, has to meet the basic principles of our struggle. And those principles are not abstract concepts. These are fundamental negotiating points: self-determination, homeland, nationhood. These are things that cannot be compromised. These are things that must be met as a minimum standard of conversation.
Ashik, are you there? Okay, so I think we may have lost Ashik, but Ashik?
Yes,
To what extent is the Tamil students and young professionals in Tamil Nadu is driven by ideology, or is it a general sense of emotion and connection with the Ula Tamils? Like, how much is it rooted in some sort of political ideology and a political solution for the Tamil cause, as opposed to out of the emotion and the social connection with their fellow Tamils?
Ideological part, it is not as much as it used to be in 80s, 90s. But now the cause is more genuine. You know, now people know what happened in 2009 is not right, and then it's more social, it's more emotional, as well as the genuinity is larger now. So that what hit the students, especially when it came up in the Facebook. People did comment and then slowly started mobilizing from colleges after colleges. Initially, they thought it will not go for so long, but over a period, mobilization went quite strong, especially when they knew that if they don't take it now, then there is a very chance that it will be a lost cause.
Okay. Krishna, you had a comment?
Yeah, I think that the Tamil Nadu student protest leaders are conceptually clear on what this struggle is about, and we see the manifestation of that in their mass demonstrations where there's pictures of the LTT leader Prabharan. So they're conceptually clear on Prabharan's LTT. We also see the Tamil tiger flags, the Tamil national flag, being waved at these massive demonstrations. So this issue that is directly connected to human rights violations in Sri Lanka doesn't exist in a vacuum. It's part of a much broader context, and this context is connected to the political ideology of the Tamil liberation struggle.
Ashik, what are your thoughts on that? Was that widespread, or was that in certain areas, the use of the LTT flag and Prabharan's picture?
I would say it's in certain areas, because students on a whole, they do not go in for that line, because they wanted to maintain non-partisan struggle. Because you have political parties who are trying to push on those lines, but the students decided they will not allow the political parties to come in and influence them. Had the political parties come in a big way, then the whole struggle would have just gone amiss. Students were quite clear of what they need at this point. Of course, I would say Balachandran's picture was there everywhere. That is part of the banners, almost every banners, Balachandran's picture was there, and it was widespread.
Ashik, would you say the demands from the students were homogenous? Were they all asking for an international referendum on Tamilulam, or was it a mixed bag of requests, or was there a clear conceptual request?
It's all clear conceptual requests. One is, they were quite clear, India should come up with its own resolution. They were not happy with the US-based resolution. They were quite clear, they did see what happened last year in UN resolution. They said if India doesn't bring it, obviously things will not be as well as we thought. So that was point number one. Point number two is they wanted India to be involved in the reconciliation process as well as the development of North. That was quite there, because we have promised about building 50,000 houses, nothing has gone well. We promised a lot of agricultural support, that has not gone well. We did promise, even infrastructure development promise for the northern Sri Lanka, that is again has not gone well. They see that Indian government has not forcefully pushed all this, though they had a lot of chances to do it.
How about on the topic, on the request of an independent state? Was that part of the discourse?
Of course.
Yes, initially it was there, but again, for them, they did not understand how an independent state will be. Somewhere confused, somewhere, they're thinking, okay, for some people they thought independent means also, and they would join the Indian
Federation,
Indian Tamil Nadu state.
Okay.
If I may interject there, they were quite clear on a referendum, calling for a referendum, in an internationally monitored referendum on a separate Ulam. They were very clear on that. And the other thing that the students were asking was an international investigation, an independent investigation. And the third thing they wanted was the imposition of an economic embargo. And they even said that they would maybe resort to a civil disobedience campaign where they may boycott paying taxes to the central government. They went as far as that. But I think I'd like to disagree by saying that they were very clear on this referendum for a separate ULAM.
I'll just add a slightly different and broader perspective. Let's not forget the original 9-point demands that were made by the Tamil Nadu student protests. They were completely conceptually clear. They wanted recognition of genocide. War crimes and crimes against humanity simply did not suffice for an analysis of what has been going on for the last 6 decades in the island of Sri Lanka against the Tamil nation in the northeast. They wanted an international inquiry. They wanted a referendum to establish the sovereignty of the Tamil nation. So as far as I'm concerned, there's no room there for ambiguousness. They were completely and concretely, conceptually clear on what this struggle is about.
Exactly.
Okay. Thank you, Krishna. Dear viewers, it's time for a short break. Please do join us after this quick break.
400 arts and science colleges indefinitely. The drastic step has been taken to stop students from protesting on the Sri Lanka issue. Protesting students are demanding that India vote against Sri Lanka as the United Nations Human Rights Council. And for more on that story, let's now go across to my colleague Sam Daniel, who joins us from Chennai. Sam, we know that students across Tamil Nadu have been staging very strong protests against Sri Lanka, and now we believe some of them have actually gone on a hunger strike.
That's right, Neha. I come to you from the Ambedkar Law University in Chennai, where behind me around 15 law students are on an indefinite hunger strike, asking the government to lead with its own resolution in the United Nations Human Rights Council. And if the camera can show, they're on a hunger strike for the 6th day, and although the government has shut down all the colleges across the state, they say this will not really stop their struggle, and they are quite determined that they'll continue their struggle. I have with me 2 students here, Noreen and Monisha. You want India to introduce a resolution at the UNHRC. Why is that?
Because we are like the leaders of SARC. We should have some responsibility, and they are our people. They are like Indians, Tamil people. So it would be appropriate if India brings the resolution and should initiate other countries to support.
Welcome back, dear viewers. The clip we just played was from NDTV and was published about a month ago in light of the Tamil Nadu student protests leading up to the United Nations Human Rights Council. Welcome back once again, but we're joined with Krishna Savanamuthu, Mrs. Usha Sriskandaraj, and Ashik Bonafran. We're discussing the Tamil Nadu student protest as well as the upcoming Northern Provincial Council elections, and as well as the Human Rights Council resolution that's connected to all these issues. As we saw in the clip, the influence and the pressure that Tamil Nadu students played was also in light of the Human Rights Council resolution, which was a point of debate in various Tamil circles, both in the homeland and in the diaspora. What were the contentions behind the resolutions, Krishna?
Well, at a very basic level, the U.S. resolution is based on the fundamentally flawed LLRC recommendations, and it goes completely against the principles of natural justice. We have a government here that has been accused of war crimes, crimes against humanity, and genocide, that has now appointed a panel to somehow investigate those crimes, to somehow make recommendations on those crimes and the entire conflict in general. So at a bare minimum, instead of basing the resolution on a fundamentally flawed process, the U.S. should have at least used the United Nations Secretary General panel report, those recommendations as a starting point. I think second of all, the LLRC recommendations simply serve to institutionalize injustice. It serves to institutionalize the oppression and the military occupation of our homeland. If you read the LLRC in quite some detail, you'll notice that it talks about the development of a new Sri Lankan identity. But that seems to be a euphemism for a religious, ethnocentric, singular Buddhist state.
The impression I had was that the Tamil media and community widespread felt that the LLRC was genuinely flawed, right?
Yes.
But many still believed that the U.S. sponsored resolution, though it's non-binding, was a step forward to bringing Sri Lanka to prosecution. Do you feel that's true?
Well, I didn't think so really, because they had as time went on, they weakened the resolution, and at the end, the words that they used were not strong enough, I feel, and so generally the students. I mean, there was a dilemma even amongst ourselves whether to support it because something is better than nothing. On the other hand, you know, the contents of that resolution wasn't itself strong enough.
Okay, Krishna, on that topic, you know, as Mrs. Sriskandaraja mentioned, many in our community and some of us in Canada went to Geneva and supported the resolution, though they qualified it saying that it's the best that we can get and it's important that we build bridges with the United States, being a world superpower, in order to push our struggle forward and presumably incrementally. What are your thoughts on that strategy of, you know, working with what exists as opposed to rejecting the resolution?
Well, there's a few points I want to make on that. First of all, you know, the new generation of Tamil liberation activists do not have a problem with engagement. Of course, from a realpolitik point of view, we have to engage with major world powers like the United States, like India. Of course, we have to engage with intergovernmental organizations like the United Nations. But it's the terms of those engagements, it's the terms of that type of negotiation, that type of cooperation that we're a little bit critical of. And I would refer to a salient point made by the late Kumar Ponnampalam. He suggested that for the Tamil people, we have to have the political wisdom, the strength, the sagacity to assert our rights as a nation. He went on to say quite clearly that this beggarly attitude that we have to let it go for the sake of our struggle. Now, I think that the Tamil Nadu student protesters have provided a very concrete example of how we can stand on our own 2 feet and we can engage as equals, not as subservients. Now, the second point I want to make is that there is no first step approach when it comes to genocide. There is no incremental step-by-step approach when it comes to a deliberate strategy to dismantle the national existence of our people in the North and the East. There is no step-by-step strategy when there is a deliberate attempt to destroy our territorial continuity.
And but some will argue it's a bird in the hand is better than 2 in the bush.
Well, this is what I would suggest, right? What I would suggest is that there is a very clear, concrete alternative. That is to go to the UNHRC meetings and to tell the United States that we want an international investigation. We want an international referendum. We want to see an interim administration to arrest the ongoing genocide that is happening against our people. Now, there are some today who would suggest that, well, a small victory is better than no victory. And if we were to call this a victory, then it's a victory with no victory. It's a victory that you can talk about, but a victory that you can't show me. And if you're going to Geneva and coming to me and telling me about this great victory that you won, I have to conclude one of 2 things. Either you've been duped yourself or you're trying to dupe me. Where is the victory in military occupation? Where is the victory in ethnic cleansing? Where is the victory in colonialism? Where is the victory in state terror? Where is the victory in rape as a tool of war? Where is the victory in a slow genocide? This is not a first step forward. This is a significant step backward, nor is it a small victory. It's a magnificent defeat for our nation.
Ashik, on that topic, on the resolution, the UN resolution, many in the diaspora are somewhat divided on it. Whereas in India, how do you see that resolution vis-a-vis the Tamil Nadu protests and India's role in the international community?
I would like to start with looking at what happened last year. Again, we had the resolution, it was diluted, and then some of it was passed. But what has happened in this 1 year? There is no development as regards the resolution last year. And here again, we have a resolution that is coming up. Tamil Nadu, especially the student movement, the other movements here in India, in Tamil Nadu at least, they felt that India should bring in a strong worded resolution. But of course, US finally brought in. What happened is when the words were diluted, when the impact was diluted, people were heartbroken. But the problem is, at least for the first time, they have come together to tell India and to tell the international community that we are one. Now the step forward is what will Sri Lanka do the coming year? If not, what next in the next year? Next year it's going to be quite strong because we are looking at the elections 2014. If India doesn't push anything strong, then there is Congress is quite concerned about it. They wouldn't want to take a risk at this point because nationwide they have a dip in the numbers. Tamil Nadu, they are in search of a new partner. DMK has come out.
Ashiq, from your perspective, what is the relationship between the US and India in terms of devising their strategy and their approach to the Tamil issue in Sri Lanka?
Not much different as I see. They are both in hand because diplomatically they're talking to each other. If they really want to do something, both nations could do something. I don't understand why they don't want to do anything at all. Here in India, at least they seem to be saying China is a big factor, that is why they don't want to do. But what stops US from pushing a strong one? That is a big question.
Is India stopping the US from pushing it? Is India stopping the US from pushing a stronger and more meaningful and binding resolution?
Yes, India also has a role in this. I wouldn't put it down because India, I would rather say, has a bigger role, but there is nothing open or concrete to say that India did this. But of course, India is behind the whole dilution of the entire content.
Well, if I may say so, the US resolution really even after that, what has happened? Has Sri Lanka taken any steps towards a domestic mechanism? They haven't. In fact, they set up a kangaroo court, you know, the Army Court of Inquiry, and exonerated themselves virtually. So, and said that there wasn't, you know, they followed a policy of zero civilian casualties, and that's what they followed. And they actually didn't call any other witnesses other than their own, you know, senior political and military
leaders.
officers. I just feel even after the resolution, Sri Lanka hasn't taken any steps.
Made any changes at all. Krishna, in light of what's happened, how do you think the greater Tamil community, whether it's the global Tamil organizations, the Canadian ones, or the diaspora, or in the homeland ones, how should they have approached that vote in March at the UN?
First of all, I just want to go back a little bit to the earlier conversation. I want to make something very clear. To somehow talk about peace without talking about justice, without talking about what justice looks like for the Tamil nation, is the equivalent of institutionalizing injustice. There's a far more insidious strategy behind this type of debate, right? We're talking about human rights and reconciliation as opposed to genocide and liberation. And what ends up happening is that it moderates the debate, not just for the international establishments, it moderates the debate for the oppressed as well. Simone de Beauvoir, she said that there's a strategy, you know, famous feminist, she said that there's a strategy to change the consciousness of the oppressed as opposed to the situation of the oppression itself. Now what we're seeing here is we're having a debate being changed from self-determination, from freedom, from sovereignty, to accommodation, coexistence.
So given that reality, right, that change in consciousness, how should we have approached, in your opinion, the March vote?
Well, I think that for any of our diplomats who are going to Geneva, they have to be conceptually clear. They have to let the United States and India know that we absolutely cannot support this. This does not work in our favor. At the end of the day, we are interested simply in regime change. If we want to change the Rajapaksa government and bring in perhaps a more liberal, US-friendly, democratic government, perhaps Ranil's government into power, then of course that strategy would work. But if we are interested in Tamil liberation, then we have to address the root cause of the problem here. We have to address the root cause of the violence. The root cause of the violence is the genocidal unitary state of Sri Lanka. And until that root cause is addressed, we can expect no type of justice. We cannot accept anything that in any way compromises the fundamentals of this struggle. So we have to be very, very clear on what we want. Rajapaksa, as far as Elam Tamil nation, is not the problem. The entire Sri Lankan state apparatus is the problem. And that is what we need to make very clear in Geneva. And if our comrades in the homeland, student activists, workers, academics, like the Tamil civil society, are able to say this under the duress of a military operation, under the duress of a military occupation, what is our excuse? We're supposedly free in the diaspora. Why can we not be this concrete?
Okay. On that note, it's time for a quick break. Dear viewers, please join us after these brief announcements. Welcome back, dear viewers. Please join our conversation by sharing your thoughts and questions at 416-623-8100. We're discussing the recently announced Northern Provincial Council elections. The NPC, or the provincial councils, were created in 1987 by the Indo-Lanka Accord, which created the 13th Amendment to the Constitution, creating provincial councils. Ashik, who's joining us from Chennai, what was the context and what was the purpose of the 1987 Indo-Lanka Accord, which was presented as a solution but rejected by the LTT, and the rest is history? What was the purpose behind the provincial council and the 13th Amendment?
Okay, for the first time, the 1987 Accord, which brought about the 13th Amendment, for the first time, it recognized the Tamil homeland, the North and East, as the Tamil homeland, and internationally, it gave a legal binding to it. But of course, the problem is when it came to the IPKF coming into Sri Lanka to maintain peace, that is where the LTTE differed from the Indian angle, and then they went back on it. But again, when I look at it, the 13th Amendment for the first time showed to a international community that we have a Tamil homeland there in Sri Lanka, North and East, and we can run a state on the plane. But in reality, by 2006, the Supreme Court seemed to have demerged the entire initiative taken by the Indo-Sri Lanka Accord. Hello?
Yeah. So what the provincial councils, do they have real power? What powers were given to them by the center?
So, okay, though they are not fully powerful provincial councils, but of course they had minimal power to take care of their own required requirements, which the North and East did not have until then. Of course, we didn't have the financial and the police powers, because it was all in the hands of the central government. But of course, here it gave us a space for furthering what the real state, independent states can have, but it didn't happen the way it is supposed to happen.
Krishna, we see already there's an existing EPC, the Eastern Provincial Council.
Yeah.
What is the reality behind their setup? Do they actually have any power?
Well, Tamil civil society activist Guru Paran, a pretty prominent lawyer, law lecturer.
Not current, but previous
Of
guest
course,
on the show.
yes.
Right. He's had quite a perceptive view on what the realities are of the provincial councils. It seems that the reality is that it's fundamentally controlled by a centrally government-appointed governor, and that governor happens to be a personnel of the army. In reality, the provincial council has very little power, very little jurisdiction over key issues like land, over key issues like education, over key issues like law and order. When it comes to arresting ongoing structural problems like militarization, ethnic cleansing, colonialism, state terror, the provincial council has next to no power. It seems that this is simply a deceptive way to entrench the unitary state, to entrench the unitary nature of the state. And sadly, I suspect that this is the very same view that is going to be adopted with the Northern Provincial Council elections. So as far as I'm concerned, this is not a solution at all to, again, the fundamental problem here, which is not a specific government, but the unitary nature of the state.
Mrs. Sriskandaran, what should be the approach the Tamil community has towards the NPC?
Well, that's a good question. In fact, I agree with the civil society activist Guru Paran in this matter. And what has happened in the Eastern provincial elections, for one thing, it was rigged. We would have had the majority control there, and it was rigged. And what happened now, we have been reduced to the opposition there. Now in the Northern Provincial Council elections, if we do not contest, we'll be disenfranchising the people. But we don't want to endorse the 13th Amendment, do we? As
far as I understand, the TNA is going to contest.
We will the TNA
which is
going to
Tamil
contest,
party.
And I'm not sure about the TNPF, but I like the TNPF idea and Guru Paran's idea, where they say we can contest, but we will we will treat it as a referendum. A referendum to reject the 13th Amendment, a referendum to reject the provincial council system, and a referendum to call for a sort of an interim administration.
Okay, and Krishna, what is the approach between the TNA, the Tamil National Alliance, which is the main Tamil political party, and that of the TNPF, which is led by Gajendra Kumar Ponnambalam? What is the difference in approach?
Well, I think the key difference is that Tamil National Alliance acts as a parliamentary group, whereas the Tamil National People's Front helps to facilitate a mass struggle. And this mass struggle unites academics, it unites workers, it unites students.
In relation to the northern provincial, to the provincial councils.
Well, the key difference again is that one party seems to provide some veneer of legitimacy, while the other party rejects it outright as any type of starting point, as any type of basis for an eventual solution to the conflict.
If I may interject there, because of the Sixth Amendment and various other limitations, you know, they can only go so as far as they can go. So I think the TNA is being cautious, but I agree with the TNPF, and I would really like both of them to come together and have a single manifesto, and the manifesto should be a rejection of the 13th Amendment, a rejection of the provincial councils, and a call for an interim administration, and it should be on a single platform, and they should obtain a mandate, just like how they got for the Vatukota resolution. And that means they are sending a strong message to the international community that this is what the people want. So
from your perspective, Krishna, should the TNA, and which Mrs. Sriskandar suggests that they should come out with a single manifesto, but so that begs the question, should there be the two, or should there be one main Tamil political party?
That would be suicidal if they contest each other. It'll be suicidal, really.
Well, as far as I understand, in my latest conversation with the leadership of the TNPF, they have decided to reject the 13th Amendment and the Provincial Council as any type of starting point to the ongoing conflict in the island. But I do want to make a point here, because I think that there is fundamentally a connection between the reconciliation paradigm that we're seeing in Sri Lanka, between India's insistence upon the implementation of the 13th Amendment, Rajapaksa's recent revelation that there's going to be a Provincial Council, and the UNHRC debate that continues to rage on amongst the diaspora. This is no longer a debate that's about national liberation. This is slowly becoming a debate that's about human rights and reconciliation. What that's going to do is facilitate a regime change. So once that regime change happens in Colombo, Sri Lanka will be able to rehabilitate itself in the international community. Sri Lanka will then be able to open up new markets for itself. Sri Lanka will then have unprecedented economic growth. But the structural, protracted genocide of the Tamil nation will be complete, and the Tamil nation will be left with absolutely nothing. So we are at a key point in the history of our liberation struggle, perhaps the namesake of the show. We are at a crossroads. And to ensure that the liberation struggle is able to move forward in a way that will meet the fundamental principles of what we are fighting for, we have to be conceptually clear.
So coming to...
So time is of the essence.
Yeah,
that's
but coming
what
to the idea on the two main, the two parties, in the parliamentary elections, the TNA was rewarded by the Tamil vote. Is that reflective of the political aspirations of the North and East?
Well, I think we can't have that conversation without talking about the elephant in the room, which is the Sixth Amendment to the Constitution.
Exactly.
So in order to truly gauge the democratic aspirations of our people in our homeland, we would encourage everybody to call for an internationally mandated, facilitated referendum in the North and the East, in the Tamil homeland, so we can truly gauge what our people's aspirations are so that they can truly self-determine their own future. Now, in the diaspora, we have had these reaffirmations of the Vatukota resolution through independent referendum, and the diaspora said very clearly that this struggle is still about a sovereign Tamilam. So I think the only way to truly gauge what the people's aspirations are is to have some type of referendum and to ensure that that referendum is free and fair.
On the topic of the diaspora, I think everyone can remark that the relationship that us in the diaspora and the homeland has changed since 2009. How is it evolving? And some will comment that the community is more fragmented, Those who are involved in business are putting their focus in that, then entertainment, and then the politics. And it's not as unified as before in terms of our relationship with the homeland. What are your thoughts on it?
Well, there is a need for unity. It's a golden opportunity, I feel, at this point in time, to come together, really. And, we can work parallelly, I feel, the diaspora Tamils and the Ulam Tamils living in the homeland.
But we can, politics aside, is the average Tamil diaspora person connected to the North and East now? Sometimes you'll see that people are they're not traveling to Sri Lanka, they're going elsewhere, Europe, the Caribbean. Over time, is that connection becoming less strong, more dilute?
Well, I can only speak for my generation of the liberation struggle, and I can say that connection is in some ways perhaps more stronger than it's ever been. We are in active communication with our counterparts in our homeland. We are interacting very closely with our counterparts.
But is that within the political leadership, or is that with the average? Because
within
the previous generation saw connections to their old boys' school, old girls' school, their university, their whereas our generation, they don't have those material historical connections.
Well, I think at a grassroots level, for the generation that was born after the Mullawaikal genocide, I think there's a very strong connection there, and that connection is only going to grow. And I would suggest that that connection is going to help facilitate what would be a transitional, transnational struggle. This struggle is no longer just confined to the island. This struggle has become truly internationalized.
Sheikh, as an outsider to, maybe outsider is too strong a word, but somebody who's removed from the diaspora-homeland relationship, how do you find that relationship?
Yes. Before going to that, can I make one point regarding the elections? Is it okay?
Go ahead. Yes.
Yeah, what worries me most now at this point is the riots before the elections. Unless there is an international monitoring system that sits in North to monitor the elections, I'm afraid the riots could be there and it'll go unreported. Unlike in the East, where you have more Tamils, in North you have more army men sitting there trying to control, and rigging is going to be a natural phenomenon that we can't avoid. So I'm worried about that, and looks like Daya Masters is going to be the candidate for the Rajapakse led team. If that is so, we don't know how it's going to be, because if they're going to just live in terms of fear and then get vote, then there is going to be a challenge.
Okay. Thank you, Sheikh. Unfortunately, dear viewers, our time is up. However, as the May 17th date draws near and our thoughts and hearts go back to that dreadful and brutal period 4 years ago, it is only true and good that we always remember, understand, and reflect on the immense loss and sacrifice. Thank you.
தமிழரின் பிம்பம் உங்கள் டிவி.